Hello from St. Thomas Episcopal Church and School in San Antonio, Texas. And welcome to our fourth episode of studying the Book of Common Prayer during Advent. I brought you back outside again. I just could not resist. The day we're filming this, it's too pretty to be in. So while we have the opportunity here, and it probably isn't going to snow this year anyway, but while it's not so cold or windy or rainy or anything like that, it's just too pretty a day. So let's be outside today. So what are we going to look at the Book of Common Prayer today? Now there are all kinds of things that we could delve deeper into, but there are two things I really want to delve deeply into, and that is the calendar and how we determine what feast days are celebrated on which days. This came up, I saw earlier in the year. On the feast day, one of the feast days, that there was some confusion about when it should be celebrated. And so I thought I would straighten some of those out and point you to some resources in the Book of Common Prayer that can help you. This may be one of those things. I did discuss today's topic with some other people, like just asking, okay, what's important to you about the Book of Common Prayer? And I'll be brutally honest, most people say the calendar isn't, because I just look at the calendar, either online or at the church. I just look at the calendar. And I can certainly understand that. But there are a few people I know out there like me who just want to figure it out on our own, because by golly, we can and we're going to. So we're going to talk about that. And then again, this is based on input that I'm getting from some other people, is what's important to you about the Book of Common Prayer, or did you find interesting when you went through catechism classes? I myself was raised Baptist, and then I converted to being Catholic. So I went through catechism in the Catholic Church, not in the Episcopal Church, because when you move from being Catholic to being Episcopalian, you're simply received. You don't have to be confirmed again or anything like that. So for me, I didn't really go through the Episcopal Catechism. They're not that different, by the way. But the Catechism is something that's very important that I think, unless you're going through confirmation classes, and sometimes even if you are, you may not actually spend a lot of time in the Catechism. And this was brought up to me as something that people found important. And so I'd like to go through it. So those two things we're going to really delve deeper into. I do want to point out, while we're together for these lessons, some resources in the prayers and thanksgivings. One of the advantages in being in a liturgical church the way we are is that you don't have to come up with all the prayers yourself. And sometimes it really helps to have a resource at your fingertips. Like, you feel a calling to prayer, but sometimes it's hard to find the words. And both in the collects, we're not going to go delve deeply into the collects because we did that in earlier lessons, but the collects and in the prayers for different occasions that have their own section in the Book of Common Prayer. These are wonderful resources. Are they the be-all and end-all of prayer? No. Do they completely replace your own prayers, your own time with God? No. Can they be a resource that you can use? Absolutely. And don't overlook that, because that can be a very valuable resource. So those two things I'd like to go over today. So let's start with the calendar. I'm going to use my big Book of Common Prayer. And if you notice all of the markings and Post-it notes stuck into it and Post-it flags and all that kind of, this is just the way I keep track of doing things for morning prayer. This is why this copy of the Book of Common Prayer is probably, you never see it outside me doing morning prayer, just because, God love it, it is marked up, and let's just don't even discuss how many Post-it notes and things it's had in it and out of it, and its pages are crinkly, and let's just say it's loved. But I think I'm going to use it today. So let's go take a look first at the calendar. Why? Why first? Not because it's the most important, I don't guess, but because it's the first one we come up against. So when we're looking at the calendar of the church, that starts on page 15. So it's one of the first things in the Book of Common Prayer. And it's going to basically show us how we break down our feasts, our cycle of the year, the liturgical year, how do we break that down? And why do we care about what day certain things are celebrated? We care because invariably, several things are going to happen on the same calendar day. And it won't happen every year, but because some things are movable, or what are called movable feasts, they're going to bump into other feasts, or even things that are celebrated on the same day every year. Just because of how the calendar moves, they're going to bump up against something else. So you sort of have to have a traffic cop, as it were, as to who gets to go first. And this section of the Book of Common Prayer answers all those questions. Do I expect you to memorize exactly how? I don't think anybody, I'll be honest with you, I may be wrong, I don't think anybody has it memorized. But this will at least provide some guidance as to and answer some questions as to why do we celebrate things on certain days. Now, we have two divisions of feasts. Ones that are called movable feasts and ones that are on specific days. The movable feasts are based on the extremely movable feast. So anything based on Easter, and this of course is Easter, anything based on Easter really gets moved around because Easter itself moves, so you never know what day things are going to happen on. Then the other major feast that things are based around is Christmas. Now, Christmas always falls on December the 25th, no matter, and it always, by the way, takes precedence, even if it falls on a Sunday. It takes precedence. You always celebrate Easter, you always celebrate Christmas. How do we find the day of Easter? Now, that's kind of fun. When I was originally taught this, again, remember I was taught in the Catholic Church, but looking historically, Easter is based on Passover. Passover is a Jewish holiday, and the Jewish year is lunar, not solar. And so days are calculated, anything calculated from the Jewish calendar has to do with full moons and the cycle of the natural year. So I was taught that originally Easter was calculated from the first Sunday after the first Thursday, after the first full moon, on or after spring equinox. Oh golly, that's hard to figure out. Over the years, it has been simplified, and it became the first Sunday after the first full moon, after the spring equinox. Well, even that is a little bit kind of movie because equinox can fall, it doesn't fall on the same calendar day every year. It can fall from roughly around the 20th to around the 22nd, I think, of March. So now Easter is calculated as the first Sunday after the first full moon, on or after March 21st. So basically it's like pick the day in the middle and it's that, March the 21st. So that's how we calculate that. Ash Wednesday then is calculated as 40 days or 41 days before that. Then let's see, let me think now. Ascension is calculated as 40 days after that. So things work in 40 days. A lot of things, more than you might think, work in 40-day cycles. So Easter, Ascension, Pentecost, and I do believe Trinity Sunday are all calculated from a feast that itself is movable. Then, now though Trinity Sunday, Advent, of course, is calculated as 4 Sundays before Christmas Day. So what happens if Christmas itself falls on a Sunday? That is the only time that the 4th week of Advent gets its whole week. So the poor 4th Sunday of Advent, it's either extremely short because if it falls, say on, if it falls the Sunday that the 4th week of Advent starts, happens to be Christmas Eve, the poor thing only gets one morning and that's it. Because by that evening, we're starting for Christmas Eve services. And Christmas Eve, remember, looks forward to Christmas Day. So that's the shortest it can be. On those rare occasions when it falls on Sunday, when Christmas falls on a Sunday, 4th week of Advent gets its whole time, and I'm sure it looks forward every year to that. In between times, if say this year Christmas falls on a Thursday, it gets its Sunday and Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, except it kind of doesn't, because then there are other feast days, but we're going to talk about those. So poor fourth week of Advent, it just almost never gets its whole week. Let's see, and okay, so the major, now things are divided into principal feasts, and these principal feasts take precedence pretty much over everything kind of, and we're going to get to the kind of. Easter always falls on a Sunday. Ascension, Pentecost, Trinity Sunday, All Saints, and All Saints is the odd man out. Christmas Day, always on the 25th, and Epiphany, which is always January 6th. Why? What's so special about All Saints? All Saints is the only one that can be moved to a Sunday. If it doesn't fall on a Sunday, it can be moved to a Sunday after, when it would, normally it's celebrated on November the 1st. It can be moved to the following Sunday. And this especially happens if it falls on a Saturday. November 1st happens to be on a Saturday. The next day is Sunday. It's going to be celebrated on the Sunday. So and now I say may. It doesn't have to, but it may be done then. And that's why a lot of times you'll see All Saints is celebrated on a Sunday. So it's not that it's wrong or somebody just made a snap decision or whatever, but it is frequently celebrated on that Sunday. Now, if it gets moved, for example, this year it happened. All Saints fell on Saturday, so November the 1st was Saturday, November the 2nd was Sunday, etc., etc. So November the 1st, All Saints got moved to the Sunday. Well, Sunday, that was All Souls Day. What happened to poor All Souls? And this is what happens. On feast days that are not these principal feasts, so somebody's got to take hierarchy, right? Somebody's got to be in first place. On feasts that are not these principal feasts, they can get moved to the first available weekday, is usually how that's put. And so that's why this year we celebrated, this calendar year, not liturgical year, we celebrated All Souls on Monday because it fell on Sunday. But Sundays, and here's a good way of thinking about it. Sundays are the feast of the Lord. All the Sundays are the feast of the Lord. So they take precedence. And anything that normally, anything slightly below that, any feast day that isn't a principal day like that will get moved. It won't be celebrated on the Sunday. So this is going to happen this year on the Feast of the Holy Innocents. The Feast of the Holy Innocents is normally celebrated on December the 28th. But this year, December the 28th falls on a Sunday, and that's the first Sunday after Christmas. So Holy Innocents can't be celebrated on that day because, why? The Feast of Jesus, the Feast of Christ, every Sunday of the year takes precedence over a lower feast day. So Holy Innocents gets moved to the Monday, which will be the 29th. I'm already confused about the calendar. Time is not my thing. I don't get lost, but I'm never on time. So just so you know this. And then the Sunday after Christmas, obviously, will be celebrated on the Sunday, and Holy Innocents gets moved off one. So I hope that kind of helps to explain how we calculate when we do things in the church. And there are, again, beginning on page 15, it goes through, and it's probably more than you ever wanted to know about feast days, Sundays, holy days. Well, let's see, I think it goes principal feasts, we talked about those 8, Sundays, holy days, and other major feasts and feasts. So there's major feasts and feasts. The major feasts, by the way, are in the calendar, in the beginning of the Book of Common Prayer. Those are bold-faced. And then just feasts are written in regular type. This kind of helps you to sort of figure out which one's which. Again, this is going to be absolutely more than you wanted to know. And also, there's a little disclaimer stuck in here. Oh, I think it's right down here. with the express permission of the bishop. A bishop can, in cases of urgency or emergency, or for reasons that he or she thinks are sufficiently important, the bishop can change some orders or can determine that we will celebrate something or we will pray for something on certain days. So the bishop has, in each diocese, and of course the archbishop, or the presiding bishop in our case, has even more power to just flat say, we're going to do this way this year. So the church grants us that leeway in case of unforeseen things coming up. An unforeseen thing coming up I can see being something like 9/11, where it's just a national catastrophe. It affects all of us. And the bishop can come in and say, we will have, even though we should have celebrated XYZ on this day, we will celebrate something else on this day. The bishop has that flexibility. So it keeps the calendar responsive to anything that's happening, to what's happening at that time. So I wanted to talk to you all about that. Again, 99% of people could really care less. You're going to look and just whatever the calendar says to do, we do, either online or at your church. But there's that 1% of us who just insist on knowing how does it work? And the Book of Common Prayer is here for you. It's going to tell you at the beginning with page 15. It's going to tell you how it works. So there. Hopefully that may answer some questions that you may have had. The second thing I want to talk about that many people think is very important, and I think is very important, is the section of the Book of Common Prayer called the Outline of the Faith, otherwise known as the Catechism. I was raised calling it the Catechism, and so that's what I've always called it. But it's actually, I like its longer name better, because it really tells us what it is. The outline of the faith. This section is what we believe. And this starts, it starts on page 844. The Catechism itself starts on 845. But some what are called rubrics, our discussion about it, begins on page 844. Which brings me to something I forgot to talk about this whole time. And those are, what are the rubrics? What are rubrics? It's not a Rubik's Cube. What are rubrics? Rubrics are the instructions, the discussion. It's those little extra things. For most of us, what we really care about is when do we stand, when do we sit, and when do we kneel, and when do we cross ourselves. And the rubrics will tell us, they will tell us that. But it also, the rubrics are the instructions. How to use something, what to do when. And they're wonderful. It'll tell you who does something. I happened to just let it fall open at the ordination of a priest on page 529. And it's going to say, okay, so we're going to do the ministry of the word. The readers are going to read something, and then they're going to say a reading or a lesson from. Okay, fine. And then when they're done, they're going to say the word of the Lord, and the people will say, thanks be to God. Or if you happen to be a real right one person, you're going to say, here ends the reading, or here endeth the reading. Silence may follow, so you can take a time of silence. Do you ever wonder why we take a moment of reflection in morning prayer? We can. We can have a moment of silence. We're allowed to do that. And the rubrics will say so. A psalm, canticle, or hymn follows each reading. Okay, that's cool. Which one? Well, that can be up to the person who's designing the service that day. Let's see. Then all standing, the deacon, or if no deacon is present, a priest, reads the gospel. First saying, the Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to underscore, and that's where you put in the which gospel you're reading. And the people say, glory to you, Lord Christ. So this is really, and you get to choose in the ordination of a priest. It can be Matthew 9, 33 to 38. I'm just reading. I've never actually looked at this before. I think I've attended one ordination of a priest. Or John 10, 11 to 18, or John 6, 35 to 38. There, the rubrics will tell. The rubrics in one Book of Common Prayer that I know of, and that's the one that's published by forwardmovement.org, the rubrics are in red. Everybody else has them in black also, but in itty bitty teeny weeny little type, so you need your reading glasses for it. But those are the instructions. So there. We've talked about rubrics. Yay. I hadn't intended to do that, but it seems like something we needed to talk about. So again, let's talk about the outline of the faith. Why is this important? This is what we believe. If you ever wonder about what we believe, come look in here. And we all should probably just go through it. It should probably be a thing we do annually, just to kind of touch base with what do we believe and what do we not believe. And it's not so much that this will ever say, well, we don't believe in this, this, and this, but it will say, this is what we believe in. Ta-da. And it's in the form of question and answer. And I kind of like to think about it as it's a teaching in the Socratic method. It isn't really, but it makes it more interactive. If this were to be just written out, you'd probably fall asleep before you got much past the second page. But in the form of questions and answers, it gets your mind to thinking, okay? So let me see. Let's go look at something. I'd love to say I just let it fall apart or just fall open at a certain place, but I didn't. I actually was planning on going over the 10 Commandments. So what are they? What do we learn from these commandments? We learn two things, our duty to God and our duty to our neighbor. So the first 4 commandments are our duty to God. And it's going to say that because the next question was, what is our duty to God? It's to believe and trust in God. That's the overview, but then it lists those first 4 commandments. To love and obey God and to bring others to know Him, to put nothing in the place of God, to show God respect in thought, word, and deed, and to set aside regular times for worship, prayer, and the study of God's ways. Then the next one is, what is thy duty to thy neighbor? Okay, in our Book of Common Prayers, what is our duty to our neighbors? Our duty to our neighbors is to love them as ourselves and to do to other people as we would wish them to do to us. And these are the last 6. Love, honor, and help our parents and family, to honor those in authority and to meet their just demands, to show respect for the life God has given us, to work and pray for peace, to bear no malice, prejudice, or hatred in our hearts, and to be kind to all the creatures of God, to use all of our bodily desires as God intended, to be honest and fair in our dealings, to seek justice, freedom, and the necessities of life for all people, and to use our talents and possessions as ones who must answer for them to God, to speak the truth, not to mislead others by our silence. That's an interesting one. To speak the truth and not to mislead others by our silence, which calls us to speak the truth in season and out of season. Deciding that you're not going to say anything to avoid something is actually, it could be misleading people, because many people think that if you don't argue, then you must agree, even if you don't. It's an interesting thing, and it's something to sit down and just hold, just think about that for a while. And then our last one, to resist temptation to envy, greed, and jealousy, to rejoice in other people's gifts and graces, and to do our duty for the love of God who has called us into fellowship with Him. It's an interesting take on the 10 Commandments. So, and this obviously goes on for pages and pages. And again, we could probably spend several weeks talking in the Catechism. But I would encourage you, if you haven't read it recently, to go through it. I did, I think it was the first year we did morning prayer, so it would have been 3.5 years ago or so. I did a talk on the Creed. And what is the Creed? The Creed is the summation of what we believe. This is how we know we are Christians, what we believe. But the Creed is the short version of it. And the Catechism is the long version of it that really just sits here and lays out, what are the Scriptures? What is and isn't the Scriptures? Let's talk about the Holy Spirit. Let's talk about the church, our ministry. Who are ministers? Well, they're lay persons, bishops, priests, and deacons. Notice the first one they mention, are lay persons. Then we talk about priests and bishops and deacons. Just something to think about. So yeah, we could spend just a whole lot of time in this, but I'll leave this to you to read, because I think it's something that you would really get a lot out of to spend some quality time with it. So while we're looking at the Catechism, we look at the concept of the Trinity. And this is just something I want to bring up for those of you who wrestle with this one. And let's face it, the concept of the Trinity is so not easy to get. Yes, St. Patrick demonstrated it with the shamrock of the three leaves of the shamrock going into the one stem. I don't know, maybe that was the best way of putting it. But the idea that God is three in one, and it's not hierarchical. It's not like God's on top, then the Son, and then the Holy Spirit. That's not it. It's them being separate but one. And then the follow-on thing that can be difficult to understand is God is Jesus is human and divine. Well, he was really divine, but he was in the human body. No. He was all human and all divine at the same time, coexisting but not commingling. That one's hard to get your head wrapped around too. But the whole concept of the Trinity is why the Creed of St. Athanasius, or the Athanasian Creed, is included in the Book of Common Prayer. Now, this is on page 864 and 865. And apparently, St. Athanasius wrestled with this one and just wrote it out, how he saw the Trinity, because this creed basically it deals with the Trinity, the concept of the three in one, the triune God. And I really would encourage you, I'm not going to read it, the whole thing to you, but I would encourage you to sit down with this one and just spend some time with it. Again, because this is considered in the historical documents section, we don't say it anymore. We say the Nicene and the Apostles' Creed because they cover more of what we believe in. But whereas the Athanasian Creed just really wrestles with that concept of the Trinity, the triune God. And so it's an itty-bitty little type. So get out your magnifying glasses and your reading glasses and let's spend some time with the Athanasian Creed. I think spending time with that is really good. So, yeah, definitely spend some time with that. The last thing that we're going to talk about today is the section of the Book of Common Prayer that are prayers. And you remember I said earlier that we have this resource, and we really should use it, of prayers in the Book of Common Prayer for all kinds of different occasions. And so when we can't find words, the beauty of being in a liturgical church is that we have resources that we can go to. We have words that we can go to. And you can use them as a trigger. Sometimes when things you know you need to pray and the words just are not coming, you can go to this section. So this is a wonderful section. I'm not going to say prayers for every possible situation that you can find yourself in are here, but a lot of them are. So beginning on page 810, this is going to happen after the Psalter and before the lectionary. The lectionary is the very last thing, and the prayers are the second to last thing in the Book of Common Prayer. So there is kind of a table of contents, if you will. It doesn't tell you which page they're on, but it gives you the number. The prayers are numbered, and they're organized by topic. So sometimes you can just head over here and just find a topic and go find the prayers for that. So it's prayers and thanksgiving. The majority of them, the first 70 are prayers. And then thanksgivings, we have 11 of those, which does not mean that prayers are more important than thanksgivings, but it just means there are an awful lot of the prayers. So they're organized by, as I say, topic. Both of them are, but definitely the prayers are organized by topic. Prayers for the world, prayers for the church, prayers for national life. I feel like we need to be spending some time there. Prayers for the social order, prayers for the natural order. So God's creation, the world, harvests, rains, weather, that kind of thing. Prayers for family and personal life. Prayers for family, for the care of children, for young people, for those who live alone, for the aged, for birthdays, absent, travelers, Oh, my favorite, for quiet confidence. And then I love this one because it ends on a prayer attributed to St. Francis. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. I think we all know now that St. Francis didn't write it, but he should have. I'm sure he approves of it. Now, there's also, again, remember the rubrics? There's also some suggestions here for the sick, the dying, and the dead. And those are actually found in the orders, in the liturgies for those. And they give you the page numbers here, so you can find those. And then other prayers. Don't you love it? Other prayers. Because, you got to have miscellaneous. In the evening, before worship, for the answering of a prayer. Saying thank you is awesome, but sometimes you want to say more than that. And so here's some prayers. Before and after receiving communion, after worship, on Sunday, and grace at meals. So really wonderful, just a great resource. And then in Thanksgivings, we have general ones. We have Thanksgivings for the church, Thanksgivings for national life, for social order, for natural order, and for family and personal life. So again, these Thanksgivings, they're not as many as there are the prayers, but I would really urge you spend time in this part of the Book of Common Prayer. It can really be a help to you. Sometimes even, you may not find the prayers here that you need, but this is a great resource to start. So I would encourage you to do that. So appreciate this treasure that we have. And the last thing I do want to discuss that I didn't say I was going to, because I forgot to do it in the very, very first episode of our study of the Book of Common Prayer. So where do you get a copy of one of these? Unfortunately, these days, church bookstores, unless you happen to live near a large cathedral. Now, if you happen to live, say if you are in Texas, if you happen to live in Houston, and the cathedral there, they have a lovely bookstore. But unless you happen to live in a place that has a cathedral or has a church bookstore, it's really, you don't find them anymore locally. I know we have lost so many church bookstores in San Antonio, and that's such a grief. But we've also lost a lot of just bookstores too. So yes, I'm going to send you to Amazon.com. However, the first place I'm going to send you is to forwardmovement.org. Their copy of the Book of Common Prayer is beautiful. But a lot of the copies of the Book of Common Prayer that I spoke about in our first episode are available from Amazon. And you just have to, I have a love-hate relationship with Amazon. I'm just going to be honest with you right now. Sometimes it's kind of hard to order physical books. Not that it's difficult. They've got a bunch of them. But to be sure that you're getting what you think you're getting. And one of the things is just look at they'll have all the information there. It's just easy to miss. The size of type. Do you need a larger type? How big is the book? Like, for example, I needed a copy of the Bible that was compact that I could take with me in a small bag. And I kind of backed into it because I had the bag. I just needed okay, you've got to fit this by this in the translation I want. So, but they have all that information. You just got to go look it up. So sometimes you have to realize, okay, am I getting the hardbound, the one that's actually got cardboard hard covers, or am I getting the soft cover? So it's sometimes no fun to have to go shopping when you can't hold the book in your hands before you buy it. But you just may live in a place where that's what you have to do. There are other resources that you can find. In fact, some of, the National Cathedral's bookstore is online, and you can order things from there. At least it was. I admit I haven't checked recently, but I'm pretty sure it's still online. You can order some books from there. But if you don't live in a place where you have a bookstore, a church bookstore, go ahead. You can order it from Amazon. I know, but you can. So I shouldn't be so down on them, should I? But anyway, so I hope that you have enjoyed this time we've had together, delving some into the riches of the Book of Common Prayer. There are many, many more things in it. So I really urge you, take time. If you don't have a copy yourself, next time when you go to Sunday services, there'll be, I'm pretty sure wherever you are, there'll be a copy in the pew in front of you. Just get to church a bit early, sit down, take some time with it. It's a wonderful resource. Thank you, and God bless. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore.